If he's right, though, and there's a breathing space now, surely it's urgent that we learn the lessons. So can I ask the Prime Minister again, will he urgently set up an independent inquiry into the government's handling of this pandemic?
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure there will come a moment when lessons need to be learned. We're learning them indeed the whole time, but I do not consider at the moment that a full-scale national inquiry is a good use of official time.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. I warmly welcome the Prime Minister's statement, which reflects very closely the advice that my select committee has taken. The Prime Minister has a new advisory group, and I'm glad of it, because the best role for SAGE is on broad questions of science rather than every little minute policy. But can he now specify from his statement whether the ban on cricket has come to an end? Cricket is perhaps our most socially distanced team sport. We've lost half the summer, but there is another half left to be enjoyed by players and spectators alike.
Mr. Speaker, I'm really grateful to my right honourable friend, and this goes to the point that I was trying to make to the House earlier, because everybody will want to add something on to the great wheelbarrow of measures that we're making, and at a certain point there will come a straw that breaks the camel's back. The problem with cricket is everybody understands that the ball is a natural vector of disease, potentially at any rate, and we've been round it many times with our scientific friends. At the moment, we're still working on ways to make cricket more COVID secure, but we can't change the guidance yet.
Jeffrey Donalds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I echo the comments in relation to the victims of the terrible atrocity in Reading, and our thoughts are with their families. I also support the Prime Minister's contention that the need for a four-nation approach is very important. And in that context, will the Prime Minister commit to share the rationale, data, scientific evidence and advice upon which these decisions are based with the Northern Ireland Executive, with our Chief Medical Officer and Chief Scientific Advisor, to ensure that we continue to have this coordinated approach going forward?
Mr. Speaker, as I've informed the House, the four CMOs, Chief Medical Officers of all former home nations, were unanimous in their view that the alert level should go down from 4 to 3, and we will continue to work together as we have and to share information as we go forward.
Sarah Brittle.
Mr. Speaker, this news will be a relief for so many pub owners in Hanburn and Haslingden, whether that be the Green Squirrel or the Haze. And the relaxation of the 2-metre rule will make it that little bit easier for micropubs, such as the Vault, Hustle Bar and the Nusden Tap. But can the Prime Minister assure me that the Government will work closely with local authorities so that pubs and restaurants may be able to utilise their outdoor space, and will he visit Hanburn and Haslingden?
I will, Mr. Speaker. There's hardly any area of the country that I don't intend to visit in the course of the reopening of the pubs and hostelries of this country. And I think there's a massive opportunity now for our pubs, with all their inventiveness, to think of ways of making their businesses COVID secure, exploiting outdoor spaces, hitherto unloved, unvalued outdoor spaces that may become havens for tables and chairs. That's right, and to use their ingenuity to open up in all the ways that they can.
We now come to Liz Saville-Roberts.
People crave confidence and competence, Mr. Speaker. With England's so-called well-beating app scrapped before it even launched, contact tracers unable to reach a third of positive cases, and no financial support, no financial scheme to support workers when public health requires them to self-isolate, what assessment has he made of the risks to business and public confidence if local lockdowns or a second peak prove beyond his government's ability to manage?
Mr. Speaker, as the right honourable lady knows very, very well, that this government has invested record sums in protecting, or by comparison, any other country. We've done more to protect businesses around the whole of the country, including in Wales. I may say that I said that we're proceeding as one UK, and we are. I have my doubts, Mr. Speaker, I must say, about the 5-mile rule in Wales, and wonder whether that might be something that was reviewed. But she makes a very important point about the need to protect against a second outbreak and to make sure that we are in good shape to crack down on flare-ups, and I believe we are, and I believe to an extent that perhaps we didn't think possible a month ago. We are able to do local whack-a-mole in the way that she describes.
Mr. Speaker, can I congratulate my right honourable friend? This announcement, particularly the reductions of the distancing rule, itself will save hundreds of thousands of jobs, so he's already done a good day's work today. Can I ask him to ensure the practicality of future guidance? Complex rules about who can do what and where and when they can do it may seem rational when discussed around a table in Whitehall, but if they're too complex and too unclear, people won't obey them. So can he make sure that the rules for the future are as clear and simple and understandable as possible?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend is entirely right. The difficulty, a message like stay at home, protect the NHS, it's very simple. Everybody can see what they have to do. Getting into the easing of the lockdown is much more complex, but I think that the guidance we've set out today is intelligible. I think people will understand what they need to do. The British people have shown massive common sense so far. I'm sure they're going to continue to do so.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Last week in my constituency in Cleckheaton, we had a COVID-19 outbreak in a meat processing factory. Kirklees Council acted swiftly and efficiently. My concern is with the government's easing of lockdown, we will see these localised outbreaks, and with the Health and Safety Executive having their budget cut by 50% since 2010, can the government ensure that Kirklees and other councils will have all the money they need to keep our communities safe? And also, what investigations are going ahead from government to look at why meat processing particularly is exposed to COVID-19 outbreaks, not just here and in this country and around the world, so we can keep those members of staff safe?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're certainly looking into what's happening to meat processing, and she's right to draw attention to that phenomenon. We've seen it in Anglesey, we've seen it in Germany. We need to get to the bottom of what is happening. We're putting more into health and safety executive, as she knows. Another £14 million we're giving to bolster our health and safety executive. And local councils will be fortified in implementing local lockdowns by central government, by the Joint Biosecurity Centre, so that we are able to crack down very, very efficiently on these flare-ups as they happen.
Mr. Speaker, going to the pub is a great British institution and vital if we want to get our economy back on track. Will the Prime Minister therefore join me in calling on people from the 4th of July to do their patriotic best for Britain and go to the pub?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I do encourage people to take advantage of the freedoms that they are rightly reacquiring, but I must stress that people should act in a responsible way, and I know that that is where the public are. I know that that is what people want to see. They want to see this reopening happening gradually. They want to see the frost leaving the tundra slowly. They understand the risks that we still face. And so, yes, I want to see people out in the shops. It's a fantastic thing to see. Yes, I want to see people taking advantage of hospitality. Again, a wonderful thing. Yes, I want to see people enjoying friends and family again, but they've got to do it in a responsible way and observing social distancing.
Going to Scotland with Ronnie Cowan. Ronnie Cowan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we attempt to move people back into the workplace, the job retention scheme is being abused by some companies to make employees redundant before August, when employers would have to pay a percentage of their salary. Moreover, others like British Airways are threatening to fire tens of thousands of loyal workers and rehire them, some on slashed pay and poorer conditions. Prime Minister, you said you were looking at what we can do. So you back my colleague, the member for Paisley and North Renfrewshire, whose dismissal and unemployment fire and rehire bill addresses this iniquity.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I will of course study the bill to which the honourable gentleman alludes, but I will study it. I will cause it to be studied. Mr. Speaker, I can tell him that he knows very well that this country has given unprecedented and unequalled support to workers and to businesses. I think 1 million companies have taken advantage of the job retention scheme. 1 million companies, 2.6 million self-employed people. There's nothing like it around the world. I think we should be very proud of what the UK has done, and we will continue to ensure that no one is penalised for doing the right thing to beat this virus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As my right honourable friend has said, the primary aim of policy was to stop the NHS being swamped, and that was met, which is a great achievement. But will he take the opportunity today to restate that in the absence of a vaccine or a cure, this virus will stay in circulation, and what people refer to as a second wave is in fact a continuation of the first wave. It has not gone away. And we can expect flare-ups as we have in Germany, and while the measures today are welcome, which incidentally give a whole new meaning to safe drinking, their observation will be vital if we're to avoid a widespread second lockdown, which would be an economic and social disaster for the country.
Prime Minister.
That's absolutely right, Mr. Speaker. I think there have been two important changes in our arsenal in the last 6 weeks or so. The first has obviously been NHS Test and Trace, which is getting better the whole time and is invaluable in fighting the disease. But the second is the treatments. And dexamethasone, which was tested in this country, really does make a big difference to the mortality of the disease. And I've no doubt that other progress will be made. He's right to be, I think, reserved about the possibilities of getting a full vaccine. That is going to be very difficult. But in the meantime, we will have to remain extremely vigilant and extremely cautious.
We're going to Belfast South with Claire Hanna. Claire Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, today, despite a strong test and trace regime, a region in Germany had to impose a specific lockdown on several 100,000 people due to a dangerously high R number. And we know that, unfortunately, while we're progressing, we're only at the end of the beginning of our restrictions. You're right to say that the job retention and self-employed scheme have been vital to many people. And I want to ask, what contingency do you have in place for ad hoc localised lockdowns that may be required? And will you roll out localised versions of job retention schemes for those areas?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honourable Lady. Let's really repeat my last answer. We don't want to see anybody penalised for doing the right thing.
16 withdrawn. Daniel Sackner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are approximately 1 million 16 to 18-year-olds in England, and some 700,000 study in colleges. Astonishingly, this week's education catch-up plan omitted those colleges, including many in my constituency of Cambridge. Can the Prime Minister explain the government's thinking behind this, and will he sort it out?
Mr. Speaker, we will of course do everything we can to ensure that not just our schools but also our colleges get the attention that they need. As he knows, there is massive investment now going into the rebuilding of FE colleges and to ensuring that our FE sector gets the investment it deserves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I warmly welcome the news from the Prime Minister regarding the tourism sector, which will be especially well received in East Devon, and of course he's more than welcome to visit any time. Can the Prime Minister confirm the government will publish full guidance to ensure businesses can keep themselves and their customers safe whilst keeping the virus under control?
Yes, indeed, Mr. Speaker, and the guidance, as I say, will be published later on today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has highlighted examples around the world where restrictions have been relaxed and where there has been a subsequent resurgence of the the virus, and he has said that he will not hesitate to reintroduce restrictions if required. I would just like to get an unambiguous commitment from him in terms of not seeing anyone penalised for doing the right thing to combat this virus. If it is necessary to continue with the furlough and self-employment support schemes beyond October, will his government do so?
Mr. Speaker, we've said what we've said about the furloughing scheme. It's our intention, obviously, to make sure that we're not in a situation where we have to keep those national schemes going. That's why the furlough scheme is tapering off in October. But clearly, if there are I've said what I've said, if there are localised outbreaks, or indeed if it is nationally necessary to put the brakes back on, then nobody should be penalised for doing the right thing.
Andrew Letson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the last few weeks, we've seen a real outpouring of love and kindness across our communities, across the country, for our older citizens. And that's quite right. But we haven't seen the same thing for our youngest citizens. So can the Prime Minister tell me what the government is doing for those who have had a baby during lockdown, or indeed who are struggling to cope, as he might be, with the challenge of having a new baby and with so little face-to-face support?
Thank you. Well, I'm grateful to my right honourable friend. I'm personally coping fine, thank you. But well, thank you. But what we are doing, as you would have heard in my statement, is where wraparound childcare is coming back for the summer. And as she knows, early years is open, reception is open, and wouldn't it be a fine thing to hear from the party opposite that it's safe for all young kids to go back.
Heading to South London with Vicky Foxcroft. Vicky Foxcroft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, I met with Disability Rights UK, who are worried that support for shielded people is being removed too quickly. In their words, if government can be sensitive to business until October, why can't they be sensitive to personal needs? Now, throughout this crisis, communication with shielded and disabled people has been poor. Will he commit to working closely with these groups to ensure clearer, more regular communication as we move out of lockdown and towards planning for a second wave?
Well, yes, Mr. Speaker, she raises a very important point. In fact, we've extended the shielding programme, as you know, Mr. Speaker, till the end of July. 3 million food parcels have already been delivered to shielded people. What we want to see is a situation in which the prevalence, the incidence is so low that the shielding programme no longer needs to continue in its current way. And I think that should be a shared ambition around the House and around the country. Too many elderly, vulnerable people have been kept in close confinement for too long, and we must help them to a new way out.
Richard Graham.
Mr. Speaker, this statement paves the way for Britain to bounce back, with most of the hospitality sector reopening, and gives us more confidence for the 10th anniversary of the Gloucester History Festival in September. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that while many of us want to see cricket played again safely, air bridges established as soon as possible, the absolutely crucial goal is for all children and pupils and students at FE colleges and universities to be able to go back to school, college and university in the autumn absolutely safely?
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker, and a point I perhaps could have made to the right honourable, the honourable gentleman who's I think no longer in his seat. It is our intention to get not just schools but FE colleges back as well in September, and get our young people back where they need to be in education and preparing for their future.
Anna McMorran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It seems the Prime Minister has given up working with all four nations. COBRA hasn't met for weeks and daily communications have ended. And I'm pretty sure the First Minister for Wales has forgotten what the Prime Minister even looks like.